we ready and live? Great. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for our LinkedIn Live event. My name is Meg Delp. I'm an organizational psychologist, LinkedIn licensed therapist, and the director of workplace mental health at NAMI, the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization. I will be your moderator for this conversation. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by two incredible leaders in the mental health and workplace inclusion space, Darcy Grododaro, NAMI's Chief Innovation Officer, and Charlotte Dales, co-founder and CEO of Inclusively. To give some background, earlier this year, I had the pleasure of meeting the Inclusively team at their fabulous leadership board gathering, and it became very clear that we shared an incredible amount of enthusiasm and passion for workplace wellness. And from this connection, we were able to build a really great research partnership where we leverage data from Inclusively's online platform to gain insight into how employees are thinking about and utilizing mental health accommodations and modifications, or as Inclusively so smartly calls them, success enablers. And we together developed a guide that shows not only the importance of getting to know our employee needs, but also how to start the conversation to get those needs met. So to kick things off, I will pass it over to Charlotte to share her story of how Inclusively came to be and her connection.
Hi, Meg. Thank you, everyone, for having me. I'm excited to chat with everyone today. My background in this space started about 5 years ago. Earlier in my career, I started off in banking and ended up starting my first company, which was a fintech company, so completely different space. But around the end of 2017, we were selling that company to American Express. And at that same time, my cousin became the first licensed facialist in the state of Florida with Down syndrome. And so she gives facials at a local salon. And when I went to go see her work for the first time, I just noticed how easy it was for her employer to make some slight adjustments to her working environment, and obviously the incredible impact that it had on her reaching potential that historically I don't think anyone expected she would reach. And I wanted to figure out how can we use technology to make it really easy for large employers to do this at scale across all the many reasons why people might need an accommodation or a success enabler at work. So everything from autism and Down syndrome to stress, anxiety, depression, and everything in between. How can we make it really easy for large employers to be able to personalize their employee experience at scale?
Wow, that is amazing. That purpose-driven work can be so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
And Darcy, I'd love to have you introduce yourself and your connection with NAMI.
Thank you so much, Meg. It's great to be here, and thanks to everyone who's joining us today. I spent 17 years at NAMI covering a variety of policy issues, youth and young adult issues. And then in 2017, I left for 5 years to run the Center for Workplace Mental Health at the American Psychiatric Association Foundation. I spent 5 years there working with a great team. I came back to NAMI 2 years ago, and part of the reason I'm here is that, like so many at NAMI, I have family lived experience of loved ones who have experienced serious mental illness and also suicide. So it's great to be here, and I am so impressed by the opportunities offered by the workplace. We know work is so essential to recovery. It's so essential to people living purpose-driven life, to use your words, Meg. And so the fact that we have so many businesses that we work with through Stigma Free who are interested in this work, and this partnership has been wonderful to really address how we can make work well for everyone. So I'm just excited about the idea that here we are having this conversation about such a critically important issue. And really, I'm at NAMI because I have been touched by lived experience, as many NAMI families have been, and individuals.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much, Darcy. So let's dive in, let's learn together. I'm going to start with you, Charlotte. what is, would you say, the biggest issue or challenge that inclusively sees companies and leaders dealing with today when it comes to really actually making the workplace work for all?
Yeah, I think that we can start with sort of what do companies do right? And I think companies already make significant investments in their employees, and that spans from EAP processes and benefits to technologies and a whole range of services. But there's not really, I think the biggest challenge is, not really having a way to properly connect what those investments are to the actual needs and circumstances of their employees. And so employees, especially this next generation, they have increasingly high expectations of their workplace. And this often stems from diverse needs, whether it's related from, a disability, a learning difference, or a mental health challenge. But there's just this critical gap, which is there's no streamlined way for employees to match their specific needs with the wide array of resources that are already available at companies. And in, vice versa, it's hard for employers to understand what are the needs of my employees and what are the resource gaps that I have. And so I think that connection point is really what creates a world where we make investments in our employees and we have employees with needs, but there's not a streamlined way for people to connect those things. And so it creates two problematic outcomes, which is employees may either quietly struggle so they don't receive any support, or they feel pressured in order to get support to have to disclose personal information about themselves to HR, to their manager, often without any clarity on what support they'll actually receive or what happens afterwards or how long it will take. So that deters a lot of people from seeking support in the first place. So there's just no simple way for employees to kind of anonymously search and discover what's available to them based on their needs, to feel more comfortable to potentially come forward in the future. So, of course, we know companies have intranet pages full of content. They send emails out about all the benefits and programs that they invest in. But this assumes two things. One, that information is reaching the person right at the right time, right when they need it, and that they'll remember it later if they don't need it. And two, that employees know exactly what they need and how to find it. So I think to bridge this gap, companies just need better data, better insights, and employees need a way to explore what's available based on their needs without being forced to disclose.
Absolutely. Yeah, that ability to learn about how to take care of yourself at work, engage in the available options is absolutely critical. So kind of dovetailing that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Darcy. What would you say are some effective ways that managers could work on creating an environment where employees did feel comfortable initiating conversations about their mental health if they did decide that they needed additional support and they did want to start that conversation?
Yeah, I think what Charlotte just shared around people being silent when they're struggling is something that we know happens all too often when it comes to mental health conditions. So this is really essential. And what is important is that there is a consistent presence of information or visibility around mental health. So one thing we have seen through COVID had a silver lining in that mental health was elevated as a topic that more and more people wanted to address more openly, which has been really helpful. And what we saw with the various companies we've worked with is that more and more managers recognized the importance and value of checking in new ways. When they have their one-on-one check-ins, they don't jump right to the assignments. They really check in on a human level and ask, how are you doing? Really get to how are you really doing? How are things going? How's your experience at work? And in some cases, even seeing managers who are willing to share openly and show some vulnerability around their own experience of experiencing stress. And although this started during COVID in the 2020 to 2022 time period, it has really stayed around, recognizing that employees, whether there's a global pandemic or not, really appreciate employers who are empathetic, who show they care. It just makes the place we spend the majority of our day and our lives much more welcoming for people. really looking to work in a place that shows that they're making the investment in the overall well-being of employees. And so I did want to mention that NAMI did a national workplace poll in 2023, a major national look at the workplace, and really asked employees a lot of important questions. What we found in our survey is that 86% of respondents believe it is their direct supervisor's responsibility to help employees feel comfortable discussing mental health at work. So that is a really compelling data point that shows that this is an expectation, and the more managers can make the workplace a place that feels safe for people to address mental health when and if they want to. This is a privacy issue. It's not something everyone may be comfortable with or even want to address, but when and if they want to, making it a place that people feel safe to do so. One other thing is just recognizing that the environment we're in now, between political rhetoric, climate change, wars happening around the world, people bring their life experiences into the office. They do not leave it when they turn on their computer or when they walk through the threshold of a building. It comes in with them. All the more reason why checking in is so important.
For sure. Yes, there is so much space in the workplace for building that community connection, especially in those one-on-one meetings. And it can be such a powerful time to really invest in our mental health at work. You mentioned some great data points, Darcy, and I'd love for Charlotte if you could continue this dive into more data. Specifically, what data are you seeing that really resonates out there with regards to this specific challenge? Oh, you're on mute still.
Sorry about that. So we have surveyed recently. We went out to about 9,000 candidates on our hiring platform. We received over 500 responses very quickly to this survey that we did. And we found that 58% of people said that they actually needed accommodation to be successful and productive in their role. Oftentimes, you may be diagnosed or you may have a disability, but maybe you're able to accommodate yourself if you're working from home, or you don't always necessarily need an accommodation from your employer. But actually, almost 60% of people said that they did. But the majority of these people said that they did not seek support, and predominantly they didn't do it because they didn't feel safe to disclose. Ultimately, they were afraid of stigma. But then when you look at some of the data that we have in the kind of early phases of our partnership with Salesforce, we just produced a case study a couple months ago. But when you compare it with that, 53% of people who registered on our platform from Salesforce, and I believe this was in the first 30 to 60 days of our rollout, went on to select success enablers, which, as you said, is what we call accommodations. And that's, when the process was anonymous. And so, I think that we sort of know a lot, like we know these stats that, 3 to 5% of the workforce actually disclose they have a disability, but we know that about 30% actually meet the federal definition. So that's a huge chunk of the population. But I think this dives even more into it's not just that they meet the federal definition, it's that the majority of them actually need an accommodation and are not seeking one. The 3 to 5% is typically, people who have visible disabilities who are actually have no choice but to disclose. But when you think about mental health, there's most of the time circumstances where you don't have to disclose and you can suffer in silence. And I think this data really shows that not only, are there this many people out there, but that there actually would want support if they felt like it was safe to get it.
Absolutely. And, it's so important to create, like we've been talking about, that space where people can go and talk about their needs, which brings in that term psychological safety that we all know and love now. I'm wondering, Darcy, what are some, or how can organizations build that culture of psychological safety and really empower their employees to speak up about their mental health without fear of that stigma or negative repercussions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to start out with the fact that mental health impacts all aspects of work. It's engagement, it's interaction, it's performance, it's productivity, it's longevity, it's retention. Mental health impacts all of that, especially the bottom line of productivity and performance. And what we know from research done by the World Health Organization is there's a very high cost to conditions like depression and anxiety in the workplace, up to $1 trillion in the US alone, when it's not properly addressed. So huge opportunity when it comes to the bottom line in making sure that people feel psychologically safe getting the help when they need it. We know 20% of the population lives with mental health conditions. We know less than half connect with care. So the workplace is a community. It's where we spend our day. How do we help ensure psychological safety? Leadership can really set the tone when it comes to this. The more leaders, again, getting back to that vulnerability issue, are willing to really speak up, not per se about their own personal experience, but all of us, we always say at NAMI, everyone knows someone. And that is so true when it comes to mental health, substance use, and other issues that are major concerns. We have a mental health crisis that rolled out after COVID. So we know that's a national concern. So recognizing that leaders who are willing to speak up about a personal connection, someone they know. I have heard of CEOs who talk openly about the fact that they have sought therapy. What we know is the reaction to that is that many people feel like, oh, I guess this is a safe place for me to do the same. I mean, imagine especially with younger employees whose expectation is mental health will be more visible in the workplace. Imagine if they're sitting back wondering, should I disclose? Should I let my manager know? Should I seek an accommodation around my need to have my depression or anxiety addressed? And they're thinking, will my colleagues judge me? Will they lose confidence in my ability? Will I lose the opportunity to have plum projects that lead to my being advancements in the business that I work in? So all of those things can run through people's minds, but the more they see mental health visible at town halls, on the intranet, through speakers that come in, through training and more, the more they are well positioned to say, this is a safe place for me to do so. So myths and stereotypes still exist. We're making progress. NAMI's done a lot of work on this, but we still have more to do, and there's a huge opportunity.
For sure. Yes, that stigma persists, but we are really trying to bring that education, bring that awareness to all workplaces. And you brought up the next generation, and we talked a little bit about this at the beginning. They really are coming with higher expectations, which we love, uh, and trying to look at how we really reach all of our employees. Charlotte, I'm wondering if you could explain what a universal approach is and how it really does make the workplace work for all.
Yeah, so our kind of point of view at Inclusively is that you need a universal approach to supporting your employees. You can't have one door for some people and another process for other people, and other strategies that you're doing for different diverse segments. Everyone is unique, everyone has needs, and if you take a universal approach to supporting your employees, you will create a better workplace experience for everyone, of which this next generation is demanding more and more of. And we all know that, and we've all seen that. But we should think about why that is. That they grew up with everything in their lives personalized to them. Not having to wait for a show to come on TV, to the ads that they see. Everything is completely personalized to their preferences. But in addition, they have been diagnosed much earlier, much more frequently with disabilities, learning differences, mental health challenges, and they grew up accustomed, in many cases, to advocating for themselves in the education system. And so, they're sort of bringing that same level of expectation to the workforce. But I think that what's also important is that the needs that they have and the expectations that they have, it's not anything that anyone from a prior generation wouldn't have wanted or hadn't thought about. It's that this generation is a lot more vocal about it, and they just have a higher expectation that it can be done at work, which is, I think, the main difference. And I think that's why, you know, in some ways we view this as obviously a really good thing, because as much as we all want to believe that companies can address mental health because it's the right thing to do, and DEI. And I genuinely believe most companies do want to do those things, but in order to create sustainable, systemic change, it has to be tied to what you were saying, Darcy, the bottom line. That's how you keep things going over and over and over. And so, you know, it's expected that we will be 85 million short of workers in just over 5 years. So companies actually cannot afford to not address this next generation of the workforce's preferences. They're the ones that we will rely on to plug the skills gap, to plug the workforce shortage gap. And companies need to accelerate how they can more effectively also tap into untapped talent. And if you create this universal approach to supporting your employees, you will create a flexible infrastructure that enables all types of employees and talent to thrive regardless of their disability or their mental health challenge or where they came from a socioeconomic perspective. So I think it's a really exciting time to all be doing the work that we're doing, because what started as an inclusion initiative and an awareness initiative and in many cases DEI initiative is now becoming a workforce planning initiative for companies that they have to address. It's not a nice thing to do anymore. It's a must have, which I think is the way we need we need the world to move towards, so that this becomes like the ubiquitous norm at companies.
I absolutely agree. Love that it's becoming a must-have. I think it should be a must-have. So let's dive even further into those next steps, how to really engage in this conversation, how to really start within the workplace. Darcy, I'm wondering, how can managers approach these conversations about mental health accommodations, modifications, success enablers in a way that really does respect employee privacy, but also ensures that they are receiving the support they need to perform those roles effectively?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one thing that's clearly needed is training and support for managers. I think we really recognize that managers need the right tools and training to support those on their team. And they really do appreciate guidance. I don't think mental health is a topic that many people feel comfortable just initiating a conversation about per se. Again, changing, but I think there's much more that's needed when it comes to tools, and it comes to really giving managers what they need. So it's about helping managers understand what the basic signs are. And when someone experiences changes, it's usually not knowing symptoms, not knowing diagnoses. It's just knowing that people are going through something that's different. And many managers know what this looks like. They think, something's going on with Darcy. I don't know what it is. I need to start a conversation. I need to know what to say. I need to know how to address it. And they really need and appreciate guidance on that. So there is a great need for that. There's a great need just to raise mental health awareness so that more people know more about it. And also the how to start a conversation, the do's and don'ts. People may unknowingly say something that doesn't land well with a person that is experiencing change related to a mental health condition. So it's knowing what not to say and how to start a conversation. And again, knowing not to mention diagnoses. Most employers are not diagnosticians, they're not clinicians, but just knowing how to say, hey, I'm seeing this change objectively, and I know this is not who you are. You're not putting your camera on in a remote setting. You're not speaking as much as you were before. I'm just concerned about you as a human being. And starting those kinds of conversations are really important. I did want to mention that, again, in the poll that we did, people were very clear in our national survey that they want managers to receive mental health training. 4 out of 5 reported that they felt more comfortable talking about mental health with their teams post-training. This is managers who reported that. And then also 7 in 10 managers said they hadn't been trained. So there's a big gap, and we think there's a big opportunity to address it. And the more we can get to a point where managers and leaders are comfortable with these topics, the better. And let me just say quickly, this is not, I know there's been some reference to this idea of employers getting soft on these issues. This is really getting back to what Charlotte mentioned. This is creating workplaces where people want to work, where their employers care about them, where they address issues that matter as human beings. And that is going to make all the difference in retention and longevity and in an investment in employees and their whether or not they stick around.
100%. Yeah, thank you so much, Darcy. We have time for just a brief answer to the next few questions, but Charlotte, I'm wondering how Inclusively's Retain platform really also helps solve for these challenges that are really plaguing companies.
Yeah, so what we've built with our Retain platform is a framework which addresses all the universe of possibilities that an employer could offer for all the many reasons why someone might have a need. And on our platform, any employee at the company can come on and say, I have ADHD and trouble concentrating in meetings, or, I struggle with depression, or they may not have a diagnosis. They may just have a pain point or be a single parent or a caregiver. What our platform does is we deduce what pain points have we identified from the statements they're giving us, which they're giving them to us anonymously. And then we're serving up what are the products, benefits, resources, technologies, services, everything that spans the many places where these things live at large organizations. We serve them up to people personalized to the needs they've identified and how to access them. And so actually to Darcy's point as well, this same platform can be used for managers. So managers can say, I think one of my employees is struggling with X, Y, and Z. And what we're doing is doing the exact same process and serving up content to them on, here's what the company offers. Here's how to have a conversation. I think training is so important, but I also think you need the information you need when you need it as it relates to your unique circumstance. And so we really try to embed as much learning and content into the platform as possible so that both managers and employees can actually learn based on their unique situations and not always have to rely on an annual training and recalling that information, 6 months later.
Absolutely. It is that holistic approach where we are getting training, having that information really handed to us, but then also having access year round to make sure that we know those next steps to take for ourselves, for our employees, and really make sure that everyone is getting their needs met. So unfortunately, we are at our time. Thank you so much, Darcy and Charlotte, for sharing your insights and your experiences with us. It has been a wonderful discussion on how we can all make great strides in really creating that workplace that is supportive of mental health, inclusion of everyone. We all want to work at a workplace that feels safe, psychologically safe, but really mentally healthy, all of the good stuff. And to everyone who joined us, thank you for being a part of this important conversation. We encourage you to read our full joint report with NAMI and Inclusively. It dives very deep into this data and the different strategies we've touched on today. If you have any questions or thoughts, we'd love to hear from you. Our NAMI stigma-free email, stigmafree@nami.org. Inclusively is contact@inclusively.com. Please reach out to us. We are happy to answer emails and chat about everything that we've chatted about today. And if you'd like to receive a recording of our chat, you can email us at stigmafree@nami.org. Most importantly, please let this be the beginning of your workplace mental health conversation or just encouragement to keep the conversation going. Whether it's starting small or implementing more broad changes, together we can really work on creating a fabulous environment where everyone can thrive.